Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another segment here on Project Purpose. For those of you who are new, we cover topics that relate to mental health, mental wellness, and education on a week-by-week basis. And today's topic of discussion is education. On the conversation on education this week, I want to talk about the education that starts at home, and that's around reserving judgment. I want to talk about the significance and the importance of reserving judgment, because in doing so, we give ourselves enough time to gather the appropriate information and to build a case before we build a position. We're not making a biased decision. We're not acting from the hip. We're giving ourselves the space and the time to think critically about what's happening in front of us and what's happening around us before we state our position, and we can defend our position as well. So I find that for me, I'm very big on responding and not reacting. And the way that I give myself the tools or the distance to respond is I reserve judgment. When something happens, I'm not going to immediately jump to the first, second, or third conclusion. I'm going to give myself the space to think, well, what are three potential alternatives before I jump into action mode? And I think that this helps me be mindful and intentional with how I communicate. It helps me to be slow to respond. And that's important because it is the case that when we're jumping from hip, when we're immediately responding to a situation, we're responding to a perception of what that situation means. So we're responding to our own bias, our own perception. And sometimes if you want to position yourself for success, you have to give yourself an opportunity to challenge your own perspective. Not necessarily playing devil's advocate, but you give yourself the space to think, well, what else could this potentially be? And I know that I'm emoting, like I'm in my emotional brain, still very reactive. If it is the case that the situation in front of me has me feeling compelled to respond, to react in a very specific way. I want to say a very specific thing, and it's going to be the thing that helps me go off steam. It's going to be the thing that satisfies my ego. It's going to be the thing that makes me come out loud and intimidating, but it's not going to be the thing that reaches a resolution. So instead I choose to respond. And in choosing to respond, I always choose as the first step of action when something happens that is otherwise upsetting, is to reserve judgment. It might not be what it seems to be. It enables me to build a case, because when you reserve judgment, when you approach a situation with an objective conversation around what's going on, you've been given an explanation, you've been given a hypothesis that could take place, like I mean that could be what was taking place, but you're not necessarily sure, so you reserve judgment. And in reserving judgment, I find that any issue that has not been addressed is often repeated. So you reserve judgment, and now you're observant. You're observing the situation, you're observing the landscape, because you want to build a case for or against the position that you've already taken. So you're challenging your bias, and this is hypothetical thinking, right? So you have this bias, you have the perception as to what's going on, you step forward and you kind of speak into that perception as a part of the issue, and you've been given an explanation that you're reserving judgment on. You're not sure, but hey, there's no buildup of evidence that gives you a reason to really counter and be very defensive about your own position, because you're not sure yet, right? But then, because issues that are not addressed often are repeated, you're going to give yourself the space to gather more information to build an objective case as to why your position, the original position that you had, your bias was either accurate or required revision. And so I like to do this. I like to give myself space to reserve judgment, because it keeps me from A, putting my foot in my mouth, speaking out of turn, and being offensive, which then would lead to B, apologizing. And while I'm always ready to apologize when I need to, I don't ever want to put myself in a position where I'm apologizing for something that I knew better than to say or to act on or to do, because I could have given myself the space, sort of a defense mechanism, by reserving judgment. I know that that's something that is within my wheelhouse. That's a tool that I've developed, because I recognize that people will play on your emotions. Like you're a puppet if you don't give yourself the tools required to take some space and to observe the situation as objectively as possible. And the more you feel like your buttons are pressed, the more that you need to give yourself enough space from the situation so that you can look at it from all sides, not just the side that really is aligned to your way of seeing things in life. And so I recognize that because of my unshared experiences, because of the values I was raised with, because of the beliefs that I was raised with, though I make every effort, I see the world within a specific lens. And because I want to make sure that that lens is never something that's going to be harmful to someone else, I make a point to reserve judgment. I make a point to let the situation speak for itself, and not react from a place of bias, not react from a place of, oh, this is what it feels in this moment, because I recognize that while my feelings are valid, they're valid because they're aligned to my perception. And sometimes my perception is skewed, right? And so I want to come on here and talk about that, talking about if you want to move away from being reactive and instead moving responsive, the first choice is to reserve judgment. The first thing that comes to mind, instead of making it a statement, make it a question mark. It's like, is this actually what's going on? Rather than this is exactly what's going on. It's like, is this going on? And what further information do I need to make sure that it's not a he said, she said situation? What that more people who are looking at the situation have the opportunity to see it from my perspective, have less to say that it would be in contrary to what it is that I'm saying, because I built up a fairly good argument based on observable facts of the situation at hand. And so I think that it has enabled me to have constructive conversations around difficult situations. It has enabled me to take a step back from situations that really just were antagonistic and hostile for no reason. And so because I believe my energy is valuable, I'm not going to react to something or to someone who is trying to get my reaction, who is vying for my attention. And in a negative way as well. Some people, they want your attention so badly that they only know how to leverage negative tactics to get it. If there's one thing about me that I'm very much a stickler about, is I don't want to give anyone attention when you're seeking it negatively. Like if you're out there doing things that are irritating, that are upsetting, that you're doing it because you want to get a reaction out of me, my commitment to you and to me is to just not give it to you, because it's much more satisfying to not give you what you're looking for, what you're acting out for, than to give it to you. And how I do that, how I ensure that I don't get pulled into someone's chaos, into someone's drama, is by reserving judgment, putting my emotions in check, waiting for additional information, giving myself the opportunity to build a case for and against the perception that I have in mind. And if it is for, if I have more information that really lends to my position on something, then we address it. And even like when something happens and there's a way to address it like more objectively, I'm going to do that. But then I'm going to really stick my feet in the ground when more information comes up on top of it, so that if someone's refuting or trying to defend and provide an alternate perspective, well, now I have the information that makes this not that feasible. It's not that realistic to think that that's what's really going on. So that's what I wanted to talk about today, some food for thought for you. Now, if you are interested, we do host live events at least twice a month, every month for the foreseeable future on our Facebook page. We also host parent-child workshops. So at Project Purpose, our mandate is to we want to provide the foundation for critical thinking, perseverance, and grit in children. And as such, we've offered 4 modules, that parent-child modules that you can work on digitally. So they focus on like cultivating autonomy, self-efficacy, and compassion, as well as self-concept, giving children a strong sense of inner identity. So that's what it is that we offer. If you are curious to see what it is that we do on our website, independent of YouTube, then check it out. Thank you so much again for tuning in. Hopefully this was helpful to you. Comment down below as to how you yourself give yourself the space to respond and not react, and how maybe reserving judgment was a benefit to you. Thank you so much again, and for those of you who are tuning in as it relates to my stalking situation, no information for you as yet, but you will be the first to know when I do. Thank you so much again, and we'll talk to you all very soon.